Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between a small business and a startup. If you've ever wondered why there is a difference, we're going to talk about that as well. So before we get started, I just want to introduce myself in case this is the first time you've joined me. My name is Taylor Darcy from Think Legal, where I help people and businesses overcome and deal with legal problems. Simple, right? We go live Monday through Friday, except for holidays and the occasional I have to take a morning off. But most of the time I'm here, so feel free to drop in and ask questions and get help for your business. I look forward to getting to know each of you, so please stop by. I appreciate it sincerely. So the other thing is, today we're going to be talking about these in the context of picking what's right for you. Now, I can't make that decision for you, so you're going to have to do some thinking and writing and deciding for yourself, but let's get started, shall we? All right, so you're thinking about starting a business, but you're not really sure what you should do. Let's break that down. Like, what are your goals? Have you written them out? Written down goal is infinitely more valuable than a non-written down goal. If it's just in your head, what I want you to do right now, like not tomorrow, not next week, today, right this second. In fact, I'll even pause for just a second. Go get a piece of paper, go get a pen, and I want you to sit down and I want you to write out your goal. What do you want out of starting a business? And don't say money. And I mean that not because that's not a valuable point. Money, it should be the byproduct, not the focal point of the business. And I'll explain that in just a second. So I'm going to pause for just like 2 seconds here. All right, great. So now that you've got that pen and paper, I want you to sit down and say, my goal in starting a business is what? Okay. Money is how you're compensated. But why you're starting a business, every business should solve a problem. That should be your focal point. What problem are you going to solve? Because once you identify a problem, the rest falls in line. People will pay you more money to solve a problem that hasn't been solved yet, or that will be solved in a different way, than people that are just trying to get money. Case in point, there's plenty of Starbuckses out there, right? There's lots of Starbucks. You know, what's the plural of Anyway, point is, if you're talking about Starbucks and you're thinking, I would love to have a coffee shop, right? Next to me, close to me, so that I can have my friends and family and people and come and just sit and relax and not feel so corporate, right? So what problem are you solving? Couple. Number one, a meeting place, a gathering place. People like to be together. We're people most of the time, right? And then the other thing is people's affinity for coffee. Okay, so that's the problem that we're talking about. So when you identify a problem that you want to solve, the rest gets easier. Then you move on to how you want to solve that problem. Okay? Now, and the reason why I needed to set that groundwork, that framework, because your how kind of dictates whether you're going to be in a startup or a small business. They're both equally viable. they both have their benefits. Don't misunderstand that you have to pick one or the other. Yeah, kind of. But they both have their purposes. So don't feel like that, oh, if I pick this one, then I'm going to lose out on that one. Okay. So to give you kind of a little bit of context, Steve Blank said in 2010, there we go, a startup is an organized form to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. Okay. It isn't just about execution. It's about speed and disrupting or significantly impacting the market. So that's what Steve Blank said in 2010. And the reason why you have to consider that is that when you're looking at a startup, right, and you're looking at your goals, you have a problem. How are you going to solve that problem for people, right? And in what way are you going to solve it? So small businesses typically have a different growth intent. They're not looking for scalability. Now, so sometimes you can start out with a small business and end up with a startup. Sometimes you can start with the startup and end up with a small business. It entirely depends on what you're doing and the type of scale that you're looking to do, right? Sometimes it just depends. Like you might start out with a certain way and realize that it's not sustainable because you didn't anticipate this problem that's preventing you from reaching there. So when you're looking at growth perspective, like how are you going to solve a problem? And then how fast do you want to get there, right? That's what your growth is about. So small businesses typically do not expect the same level of growth as a startup business. That's just pretty simple. Startup businesses aren't also looking to disrupt the market. Okay. Startup businesses are looking to fit into the piece of the pie of that market. Remember when I've talked about in the past about white bread, right? There's lots of, if you ever wonder if you have something to offer someone, go down the white bread aisle, right? Or go down the bread aisle and look at white bread, how many different types of white bread there are. So where are you going to fit in that white bread category or the wheat? I don't know, whatever your favorite bread is, whatever you're going to make, right? Like your pumpernickel. I don't know, your choice. The point is that a small business is not looking to disrupt the market. They're looking to have another white bread, right? They're not looking at changing the bread model, the bread baking model. They're looking at how can I make a white bread that will get bought, okay? So startups are looking how to change the market. Remember, how you solve a problem makes a difference. So these types of things are what you're going to want to consider. Are you looking at changing the market? Are you looking at disrupting the market? Are you looking at doing it quickly and efficiently? All of these things go into your planning, right? So the next thing is startups are usually found in the tech sector. Not always, but generally, because that tends to be where they can scale the fastest and affect change the quickest. Small businesses are typically found in what are called Main Street businesses. You're looking at coffee shops, grocery stores, plumbers, anything that typically has a single person involved to start with, right? They run multiple parts of the business. And so versus a startup is looking at hiring quickly, getting a product done, and then a lot of times they're looking at getting bought. Okay. In fact, once upon a time, I many moons ago, I was driving for Uber and Lyft, and I met someone that was coming in from Silicon Valley, and I said, "Well, how do you afford a house up there?" And this was before our current craziness here in San Diego. And he said, "What happens is that we scale these businesses, and then when we make the money that we've scaled for, it then creates a situation where we can afford that house, right? So they put all this money and time and energy into this through an ownership of stock. And then when they get bought out, that's how they afford to buy that type of house. So I want you to think about that in context of your current thing. Like what are your goals? To create income or to create wealth? Not dissing either. It depends on your goals. Startups are usually temporary. They evolve quickly. They aren't looking at staying the same very long. And so you've got this issue where you want to consider for a second that if you're looking for a sustainable business for long term, maybe a startup's not right for you. Okay? Because you're going to want to get set in that startup or that small business and have a different path than a startup will. A startup can have multiple iterations, right? They evolve quickly. It's something that you're looking at. Okay, if this isn't working, keep moving. So, but you can take components of startups and apply them to small businesses. But it's not always as simple as making a square peg fit into a round hole or vice versa, right? Because here's the next thing. Small businesses usually grow via two ways: sweat equity or through loans. Those are your options. Because most angel investors and venture capitalists because startups fail so regularly and so quickly, most angel investors and venture capitalists want a high rate of return and quickly. They want to get their money in and their money out so that they get it out before it fails, right? Like, they're not trying to screw you. They want to help you. That's the point of the investment. But the goal is for them to make money. Like, and any investor's purpose is to make money. It's not as simple as saying, oh, I'm interested in this, and so therefore I'm going to do that. It's just, they're not as altruistic. They're about the money. Like, the founder of the startup typically is the one that has the passion, the drive, and the whatever. The investors are typically just not necessarily passive, but they don't care nearly as much as the founders do. That's just who they are. Okay. So with a startup or a small business, on the other hand, your options are different for financing. Okay. Because there's really no equity. There's no value of the company to work with in a small business versus a startup, because it's scaling fast. Because one of the typical goals of a startup is to go public, not always, but sometimes. And so there's an opportunity to get cash out and have investors versus a small business, not so much. It's just not realistic to have that happen. And perhaps the biggest, and I want you to think about this for a second, the biggest difference between a small business and a startup is the risk factor. Small businesses tend to be less risky. Only about 20% fail in the first year. Small businesses have a more linear growth curve. Like, it's flatter. Like, it starts out here and then it goes up, right? A startup is more of a hockey stick, right? It goes like this and then, okay? Versus a lot of small businesses are going to just hit a nice curve, okay? So, but with more reward comes more risk. Startups fail more regularly than small businesses do. Small businesses are typically more stable. That isn't to say that they're not as stable as, say, an employee relationship. And I'm not advocating for being an employee. I'm simply saying the stability of a small business tends to be higher relative to a startup. So there's not as much reward on again, that growth curve makes a difference. There's not as much reward on a small business in that time period, in a short period of time. In a startup, there's more reward quickly, if there's to be reward, if there's to be money, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee anything because your risk is so high. So these are all factors that you're going to want to think about when you're starting a business. What's right for you? And I don't have that answer. First is figure out the problem that you're going to want to solve. and then identify these different types of models on how you're going to solve the problem, right? Like what creates the drive to get there. And there's nothing wrong with wanting money out of the deal. Absolutely, you should be compensated for your time. But the difference is how quickly do you need the money? And are you looking at getting in and out like that? Or are you looking to create a business that's long-term and sustainable? So these are all the sort of things that you need to evaluate that I can't tell you what to do, but I can give you the tools to help you evaluate them. But as it always comes back to, figure out your goals, figure out your why, and then everything else starts making a lot more sense, okay? If you've gotten value out of this video, don't forget to subscribe and like, and know we go live Monday through Friday at 11. We'll see you later. Have a good one.